Hey, everybody, what's going on? This is your man, Big B, Brian Hanley, and welcome to Steelers Almighty Scouting Report, man. Steelers take on the Washington Commanders. And look, man, this is a pretty evenly matched football game between two pretty good football teams. Steelers going on the road here. We're breaking all of this down in the scouting report like you know we do every Friday, man. We've got David Harrison from Locked On Commanders coming on later on. You guys are really going to want to stick around for that. He's got a lot to say about not only the Commanders, but also this matchup. So make sure you stick around for that, man. So I appreciate it. As always, continue to like, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff, man. Steelers Almighty, fastest growing Steelers channel on YouTube. And that's all because of you guys. We went over 4,000 subscribers earlier this week, man. It's just amazing how much support you guys have shown this channel. We've got some changes that I think are going to be coming up that are going to be for the better. You guys asked for it, so we're going to give it to you. So I appreciate you guys, the support. Let's get into this thing. So first things first, as far as the overview, the Washington Commanders, the game is there. So it's in Landover, Maryland. Northwest Stadium is now the name from FedEx Field. I don't know how I feel about that. Uh, Us as Steeler fans, we know about name changes to our stadium. Not sure that we're still on board. I would say the majority of Steeler fans still are sticking with Heinz Field, but it's called Northwest Stadium now in Landover, Maryland. The Commanders are favored by 2.5 points. So we're road dogs. 57 and cloudy. They said that there could be a storm that comes later on. They're saying after the game is over. So it's not going to be sunny, but 57 degrees. While I would prefer it to be sunny, 57 degrees is football weather, people. I love it. I would even prefer it to be a little bit chillier than that. But 57, I can get down with. Going to be a good day for football in the D.C. area. So as far as some of the positions that the Commanders have, top three on offense, look, Jayden Daniels, rookie, playing outstanding football, man. Early in the season, he did some rookie things like maybe running the football a little bit more than what you have liked, but it was effective. Now he's starting to see more things down the field. The game is starting to slow down for him. It appears now there's still a lot of football left to play, but it appears that he was the best rookie quarterback in this class this past season. That's not a knock to anybody else. That's just uplifting what this guy's been able to do so far. And you're going to hear a lot of that from, like I said, from David Harrison on what he brings to the table and how he brings it to the table. Terry McLaurin, look, 42 catches, 596 yards, 6 touchdowns. Some people left this man for dead last year. Some people thought, he's overrated. He got a big contract. He's not that good. Yeah, Terry McLaurin is that good. He is that good. There was trade talk this offseason about possibly trading him. I don't know that the Commanders were really serious about that, but you know how the rumor mill is in the NFL. But he is an outstanding wide receiver, and they are taking advantage of some of his talents. And then Brian Robinson, look, 461 yards, 6 touchdowns. When he's been on the field and been able to run the football, I think that's when they're at their best. It's not that they run the ball so much more with him. It's just when he's out there, you can't necessarily concentrate on one thing. So Jayden Daniels also brings a lot to the running game, too, from the quarterback position. But Brian Robinson is an outstanding runner for the Commanders. A little banged up, may or may not play this weekend, but either way, good running back. Now, as far as the defensive side, look, man, Bobby Wagner just continues to be that guy. Not sure that he started off the season great, but sometimes when you're a little older, it takes your body a little bit to get warmed up. We know it. Think about us just waking up in the morning. We just wake up in the morning, man. We need 15, 20 minutes, an hour to get our body going. This guy's going out there playing football. So maybe it took him a couple games to get right. The one thing that I know, he's right now and playing outstanding football, leading the Commanders on defense. Frankie Luva, 54 tackles, 4 sacks, outstanding free agent signing for the Commanders. Another linebacker making plays, and then Dante Fowler, 6.5 sacks. Just playing. It's a Sam linebacker, but it's basically a rush edge, just making plays for the Commanders. Just making plays. Their defense is improved. This is a really improved football team, and the one thing about it is they believe. They believe that they can win, and they are winning. So, like what they have going on, free agency. Look, they brought in Bobby Wagner. They brought in Frankie Luva. They brought in Dante Fowler. They brought in Zach Ernst. They brought in a ton of guys. They just said, look, the football team that we have right now is not good enough. But if we make a conscious effort to bring in this number of players or these type of players to fit what we're trying to do, we can be better. They did it. The football people made the decisions. The owner let them make the decisions, which is something that has not happened in Washington in a long, long time, where the owner got the hell out of the way and let people that knew what they were doing do the football stuff. That's happening now, and you're seeing the dividends. Again, a lot of football left to be played, a lot. But all we can judge it by is what we've seen so far. And what we've seen so far, it's working in Washington. Top draft picks that the Commanders have. Look, we talked about Jayden Daniels. So far, I don't think there's any question that he was the top quarterback in this draft. He's gone out there, he's made the plays. He even got hurt in a game, came right back the very next game, didn't miss a beat. He's playing outstanding football for a rookie quarterback, making decisions. It seems like he knows when to run, when to throw. Which is something that a lot of rookies, it takes them a couple of years to figure that kind of stuff out. At this point in his career, again, it's a 9-game sample size, but that's all he's got. He has figured that out so far. Jerzon, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, Jerzon Newton. And if I'm pronouncing it wrong, I apologize. Don't shoot me. Is playing outstanding at defensive tackle. He's going to have to step up even more now that Jonathan Allen is out for the season. But he was the 36th overall pick. Probably a little underrated just because he wasn't 6'5", 325 pounds. So you know how the measurables go when it comes to drafting people. Well, he doesn't have the size to play defensive tackle, even though we've seen on tape he dominates football games. Doesn't matter. Well, this guy's going to be a player in the National Football League for a while. He knows how to play the position. He's outstanding technician, speed. He's got what the Commanders need. He's got what anybody would need. He just doesn't have the measurables. Well, who cares? If you can play football, that's all that matters. If you can play it really well, it's all that matters. He doesn't have to be 6'5". Doesn't have to be good defensive tackle. And they drafted him to take one of either him or Daron Payne's spot anyway. So he's getting in there now because Jonathan Allen is going to be out. Commanders got him one there. As far as the injury front, look, for the Steelers, Zach Frazier, they're getting everybody back. The Steelers are getting everybody back. The one guy that may not be back, they're talking like Nick Herbig might not be back. I actually think he is going to play in this football game. And Corey Trice Jr., same with him. They're like, he's got to hit certain milestones. But I think Corey Trice Jr. is going to I think Corey Trice Jr. actually is going to sit out this game. I think he's going to come back next week. If he does play, great. But as we sit here on a Friday morning, I see Corey Trice Jr. sitting out this week, coming back next week. But if he does play, that's even better for the Steelers, which means he's gotten better quicker. He's hit the milestones. He's going to be out there. As I mentioned, Jonathan Allen for the Commanders, torn pec, he's going to be out. He's out for the rest of the season. That sucks. Jonathan Allen's not only a good football player, he's a good human being. For everything that I have heard, he's still leading in the locker room, even though he can't play, which is something that you need out of one of your leaders of the football team. Even though you can't be out there physically, continue to lead, continue to help Newton get better and tell him what you're seeing out there so he can go out there and produce. And then they just traded for Marshawn Lattimore. Is he going to play? He has a hamstring injury, and this one was one of the legit hamstring injuries. We saw a hamstring injury by Devontae Adams with the Raiders where, well, he's got a hamstring, he's not playing. All of a sudden, he gets traded. He's full go. Nothing. It's like nothing ever happened to him. Marshawn Lattimore, this one's different. He hasn't played. He hasn't practiced. So that's a little bit different than the Devontae Adams. So I'm not sure he's going to play. We'll see. Again, they're going to have practice Friday. We're here taping this on Friday morning. So we'll see how the rest of this week or how the week goes today, tomorrow when they test it out if Lattimore is actually going to play. So let's get into some of the matchups here. Again, I mentioned this is a pretty evenly matched game, but there's some things that the Steelers can do, some things that the Commanders can do that are better. But first off, we go strength versus strength. You know how we do it here when we do our matchups on Steelers Almighty. So the Steelers rush defense is fourth in the National Football League. Now, I know Steeler fans, you're going to say, well, the last time we were out, we didn't look good against the Giants. Well, the Commanders have a pretty good run defense. They didn't look good against the Giants last week either. But overall, the Steelers do shut down the run pretty well. Do they need to tighten up some things? Yes, they do. But they're still fourth in the league. I mean that's a real thing. It's not make believe. The Commanders can run the football though. They're third in the National Football League. And if Brian Robinson is out there, yeah, they can run the football, and they will run the football. Now, some of their running comes from their quarterback. For some reason, people don't want to count quarterback rushing yards as real rushing yards. I don't understand that because the quarterback runs the football, even if it's in a scramble situation, they don't take the yards back. They don't say, well, I know that your quarterback, he ran the football. It wasn't a real running play, and he ran for 27 yards. We're only going to give you 15. We're only going to give you 8 of those. No, they don't. They count. So having Jayden Daniels be part of that and what he brings to the table, does it add to what they can do rushing the football? Yes. Is it an added weapon? Yes. So it counts, people. It counts. And they're third. So I'm interested to see that matchup. Again, Brian Robinson, a little banged up. Is he going to play? I think the Commanders are a lot better football team when he does, but it doesn't mean they're ineffective when he doesn't. Their offensive line has played outstanding this season, and I think it's better than anybody could have anticipated their offensive line playing this year when they put it together. Yes, they were hopeful, and I thought maybe they would be better than what they had been previously, but I don't think anybody thought that they were going to play as well as they have so far this season. So that's good for the Commanders. Strength versus weakness. The Steelers' strength, again, we are rushing offense. The Steelers are eighth. The Steelers have been running the football pretty decent. It's been a hell of a lot better over the last 3 weeks. We put even more emphasis on it, mixing things up. Russell Wilson being inserted into the lineup has helped. He's taking control of the line of scrimmage, going from, hey, they got 5 guys on the right and they only have 3 on the left. We need to run it left. It's just moving things around. He's taking control of the line of scrimmage. And him being out there has gotten us out of bad plays into good plays in the running game. That helps, people. That helps. But the Steelers are eighth. The Commanders' running defense, not so good. It's 28th in the National Football League. That's not great. So the Steelers should be able to take advantage of that. They really should be able to take advantage of that when they make a concerted effort to run the football, which we know the Steelers are going to do. That's what their offense is predicated on. Running the football and play action. I mean, just that simple. And with Russell Wilson out there, the play action has been incredible. So I expect that to still be a big part of what the Steelers want to do. But the Steelers do have an advantage, at least on paper, when it comes to running the football in this contest. Now, weakness versus strength. Steelers' weakness, our passing offense, 26th in the league. It's a little misconceiving because of what happened the first 6 weeks of the year. We didn't have a ton of passing yards. We didn't throw the ball down the field as much. And even when we did, we had a couple of long pass plays called back because of penalties. Some were BS, some were legitimate, but nonetheless, they didn't count. But the last 3 weeks, or last 2 weeks, you could say, with Russell Wilson, Steelers have been over 250 yards passing. So things are going to change as the season progresses, as long as Russ is still out there and we're still able to throw the football. So, but the numbers are still the numbers. That's not the strength of the Steelers as of yet. Does it look different? Hell yeah, it looks different. And anybody that's paying attention knows that it looks different, which is good. But the numbers are still the numbers at this point. Commanders' pass defense is fifth in the league. So I get it. This is one of those areas where, Yeah, I know, Big B. The Steelers' offense hasn't been great throwing the football, but it looks better the last 2 weeks because we have a different quarterback. Doesn't matter. The Commanders are shutting people down in the passing game. So I'll be interested to see what that matchup looks like. Now, the flip side of that could be, well, teams are running the ball on the Commanders, so maybe they're not passing it. I don't know if I buy that because the Commanders have been ahead in a lot of football games and teams are throwing the ball. You're pinning your ears back, you're getting sacks, but the Commanders are putting up points, which means teams have to try to throw the football and they're not able to. To me, that means that their defense is pretty good. Their pass defense is pretty good, just in my eyes. So it'll be a good matchup. Like I said, a lot of close matchups in this football game, man. Now let's look at the overall matchup of everything. So uh, the game, like I mentioned, is in DC. The Commanders crowd. I don't know that they ever left, even though that they had been struggling. I don't know that they ever left. I know they're a proud football, not only franchise but fan base. This is not going to be a game, even though this game is not that far from Pittsburgh. This is not going to be a game where we take over, like in Las Vegas, where we took over, or in Atlanta, where we took over. We'll have some fans there. Don't get me wrong, because the Steeler Nation is Steeler Nation. Let's not kid ourselves. But the Commanders have a proud fan base, man. We're not going to have 35 or 40% of the fans in that stadium. If we do, I would be very, very surprised. But I don't think it's going to be that. So they're going to have a decided advantage there. Look, the coaching, while I like Dan Quinn is not Mike Tomlin. Okay. There in most games, the Steelers are going to have advantage in the coaching aspect. And in this one, again, is the same case. Now, that doesn't mean that Dan Quinn's a bad football coach, because I'm not saying he's a bad football coach. I honestly believe he got a raw deal in Atlanta. He went to Atlanta. They get to a Super Bowl 2 years later. You fire the guy? I mean, it's like no patience. I'm like, he got you to a Super Bowl. Did he make some stupid mistakes? Or was it Kyle Shanahan that made the dumb mistakes to not run the ball? And if you just run the ball in the Super Bowl, you win it. Whatever the case may be, I'm just not sure he should have been fired. Sometimes franchises got to use a little bit more patience to get to where you want. Needless to say, excuse me, Washington is glad that you did. He's glad that he's here because he's putting his imprint on this football team, and he's a good coach. Having said all of that, he's not as good as Mike Tomlin, period, end of discussion. As far as the history goes, it's a long history of these franchises playing. These are two of the older franchises. I know a lot of people look at Pittsburgh and think, man, the Steelers basically over the last 50 years have been a winning franchise. Well, there was years before that. A lot of bad football that the Steelers played before that, man. Commanders lead this series 43-33, three ties. The Commanders won the last game in 2020. If you remember, the Steelers started 11-0 in that COVID season. And then they came to Pittsburgh and beat us. That was the year that while we started 11-0, there were so many of us out there that were like, yeah, we're 11-0, but are we really a good football team? And Washington, who wasn't a good football team, came in and just basically said, no, you're not that good. And they smacked us around, beat us 23-17. That's kind of started us on our downward spiral. But previous to that game, the Steelers had won 4 in a row against the Commanders. So hopefully they can get back on track and win the football game. Now, as far as rosters, I think the Steelers roster, man for man, might be a little bit better than what the Commanders have. If you just go down the line, man for man, I think the Steelers actually do have a better roster. Now, when it comes to matchups, I think the matchups, I've said it a couple of times, I think it's pretty even. When offense, defense, pass, run, and where I think we have a real advantage might be on special teams, which the Steelers are going to have an advantage over everybody in special teams up to this point. But when it comes to matchups, I think the matchups are pretty even. So I'm not going to go there. As far as the outcome, I went back and forth on this one. The Steelers have, anytime they've given up over 20 points, they've lost this year. That again can be a little bit misleading because their offense now looks different with Russell Wilson. It's just a different offense and capable of putting up more points. It has put up more points. But you're going to have to do that because I don't know that the defense is going to be able to shut down the Commanders. I just don't believe they're going to be able to just shut them down. And then again, shutting teams down in the National Football League is relevant, especially the way that the rules are and what they don't allow defenses to do. Having said that, I think the Steelers get away with one here, and I think they take one on the road 27-26. Boz late gets us a field goal, and then we stop them. They're trying to drive, and we stop them from being able to get into field goal range. I like the Pittsburgh Steelers to come away with a win in this matchup. So, going to be a close game. Going to be real close, but I think the Steelers give me 27-26. I like that. Now, next up, people, we try to get as many um, content creators, podcasters, reporters from the other team to try to give this a little bit of relevance. Well, we got a really, really good one here for you guys today. David Harrison does a lot of things for the Commanders. He's a football junkie, knows exactly what he's talking about when it comes to football, can talk X's and O's if you want to talk X's and O's, can talk concepts if you want to talk that. He's just a really knowledgeable football guy, and we are very fortunate to have this guy on. So we're going to bring David Harrison from Locked On Commanders on now, bring him in, and then we will be back to wrap up the show. All right. Now, welcome in David Harrison with Locked On Commanders joining us here on our scouting report today. First things first, David, how are you doing today, my man?
Oh, I'm doing great, man. I appreciate the invite. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you for giving us your time, man. We appreciate it. Kind of give us the temperature right now, David, of the Commanders. Not just the Commanders as the players, but the players, upper office, fans, everybody involved. What is the temperature right now?
Yeah, everybody's pretty happy. I think that everybody is pleasantly surprised. I mean, certainly, the expectations you were bringing in talented people going all the way back to Josh Harris, bringing in Adam Peters to be the general manager. And then from there, finding the right head coach, finding the right coaching staff, and then, finding the right pieces. And I think the first step of the whole thing was making sure that you had a general manager and a head coach that were on the same page of what kind of team is it that we're trying to build here, so you don't have differing football theologies competing against each other, and an evaluator who's naturally drawn to a certain kind of player needing to fight those instincts to go find a different kind of player for the coach. And I think that really is where this whole thing kind of starts. And then you see them bring in all these players, and Josh Harris, as the managing partner of this ownership group, has done an amazing job of letting the football people do the football stuff. That's kind of what he
Right.
said is, he wants to be involved in not making the decisions, but understanding the decisions. Like, why are we doing this? Why are we bringing in this person? Why are we drafting this guy? All that. So he wants to know why the things are happening, but he's not looking to say, okay, well, hey, Adam Peters, who has 2+ decades in football evaluation, I'm going to tell you as the billionaire owner who the better player is. That's not what Josh Harris is doing, and I think that's a great method, and obviously it's working really well for him. So everybody's just incredibly happy, and then you see them obviously shift into now, not only are we trying to retool this team, that's the word they've been using, avoiding rebuilding, but now not only are we retooling, we're competitive. And now we're going to go out and get a Marshawn Lattimore to help us with this back half run and potentially making a run deep into the playoffs.
And that's the thing. You said it there, David, is that getting people in place, football people in place, and letting them do their jobs and not getting in the way. That's you see that. I know the Commanders had that for a while. You see that all over the place. Teams getting in the way, but this is one of the things as far as the Steelers are concerned. The Steelers have been one of those franchises that has literally done what you just described. They let
Hmm.
the football people be the football people and make decisions. The why, yes, I want to know why, but you guys are making the decisions. You are in this on a day to day basis. I think that's important. And it's good to see that kind of stability because Washington is one of those franchises. You want to see it do well. I know maybe the rivals, the Eagles or the Cowboys or the Giants probably don't, but just from afar, you want to see Washington get back to playing relevant football late in the season. Speaking of that, last week, tough game. But to me, it seemed like one of those games where uh, they showed because a lot of people talking about the Commanders as far as their offense going
Yep.
out and scoring a bunch of points and winning games. That wasn't the case last week. I mean,
Mhm.
they scored some points, but it wasn't just this offensive juggernaut that went out there and had 500 yards of total offense. It wasn't that way last week, David.
No, I mean, going up against a really tough Giants defense, I think it's easy to look at these teams that are kind of middling at the bottom of the league and just kind of struggling to get anything going, and just look at them in a totality sense and say, well, that's just a really weak team. But some of these really weak teams have really strong units, right? And the New York Giants have a pretty solid defense, and within that defense, they have a really good red zone defense, and that's where the Washington Commanders really struggled against them in week 2, getting into the red zone 6 times, moving the ball between the 20s. But then once you get inside the 20, that's where
Right.
things down. And so this last week, it was really important for those Commanders team to show growth across the board. That's something that Dan Quinn talked about ahead of week 9, was he wants to come out of week 9 looking at that week 9 Commanders team, knowing that if they put that team against the week 2 Commanders team, that week 9 Commanders team would kick that week 2 team's butt. And I think that we can say that honestly right now, this version of the Washington Commanders would kick the tail out of the week 2 version of the Commander. So, even though it wasn't this like 30-40 point explosion that we've seen against some other opponents, it was a really solid 3-phase win. The defense came through in the second half and really made some important adjustments to get that run game under control as the Giants established that in the first half. And it just kind of showed not just the growth of the individual players, but also the schemes and the coaches as well. Because again, I watched a lot of football in my lifetime, and too many times you see teams going to halftime, come out saying they made adjustments, but nothing.
Right.
And so it's good to see coaching staff, especially first year defensive coordinator, play caller Joe Witt Jr. coming out in the second half with a really strong approach, and outside of one check that they made poorly in the fourth quarter that
Mhm.
led to another touchdown, really should have kept that game a little bit wider than it ended up being. But the good news there too, Joe Witt Jr. told us on Thursday that check is no longer in the scheme. That check is completely gone because and these are his words, clearly we can't execute it properly, so we're not gonna do that anymore. So good to see that too.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things, and I always say this, is that it's one thing to make a mistake. It's one thing to live in the mistake. And when you don't live in the mistake, that's when things can get better. Just recognize it, get rid of it, move on. And speaking of red zone stuff, that's kind of where, I mean, the Steelers' last game was against the Giants, so it was a week
Mhm.
before the Commanders played. They had the same red zone issues. First half, they just could not score touchdowns. They were going up and down the field, between the 20s, and then it got into the red zone. Just couldn't put it together. So the kind of the same type of struggles. Um, Cliff Kingsbury. Let's
Mhm.
talk about him and what. Look, everybody talks about Jayden Daniels, but
Yeah.
what has Cliff Kingsbury meant to Jayden Daniels?
Yeah, I mean, supporting what makes him great. You know what I mean? Like Dan Quinn calls it superpowers, and Cliff Kingsbury has done nothing but embrace Jaden Daniels' superpowers.
Yeah.
And again, you look around the league, and this was a big question I had. With the Chicago Bears having the #1 overall pick, because there were towards the actual NFL draft happening, there actually started to be some Bears people who started leaning, saying maybe Jaden Daniels is actually the best quarterback. And the problem is, well, the Bears didn't actually do their due diligence, so even if he was, they're not going to find out. The problem with that though is, if Jane Daniels goes to Chicago, are they going to allow him to be Jane
Nope.
Daniels? And you're shaking your head. No, I agree with you. That's been the Chicago Bears problem. Honestly, going back to Mitch Trubisky, I'm not sitting here
Yeah.
saying Mitch Trubisky would have been an all pro Hall of Famer, nothing like that otherwise, but they handcuffed him. They handcuffed Justin Fields. And I don't want to say they're handcuffing Caleb completely, but Caleb does not look like Caleb Williams a lot of times. That's a whole other conversation.
Right.
Jane Daniels with Washington, and with Cliff Kingsbury specifically, is allowed to do whatever he needs to do to be successful. And I'll go all the way back to week 1 against Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Raymond James Stadium. His clock was accelerated, right?
Hmm.
Now a lot of people hear that and they think like, okay, panicking, things like that. He wasn't panicking. When I say his clock was accelerated, I just mean the process was moving a lot faster internally than it
Sure.
had to externally. And that's just a sign of a rookie quarterback in his first NFL game. He's on the road. Todd Bowles' reputation precedes him. The player reputations precede him. Look, Levante David, Buccaneers linebacker, and Jane Daniels share an agent. So he also knows a member of that defense. Well, guys talk ball and the guys talk shop. So when he's like, "Oh yeah, man, Vita Vea is going to come after you. Oh yeah, man, Antoine Winfield Jr. is going to crash down into you." Those things get you. He's still a human being, but that led to, I think it was 16 rushes that first weekend, and everybody around here is like, "Oh man, that's a lot of running," and he's got a thin frame and all these things. And Cliff Kingsbury said, "Look, guys, to a certain extent, week 1 of a rookie quarterback, he's in fight or flight mode. He's in survival mode." And so sometimes that was flight. That was time for him to get out the pocket and
Right.
send those legs and get the ball out, right? And we're gonna do that. And eventually it's going to start coming back down to normal, right? The New York Giants game, you saw it a little bit less. The first, I think, 4 of the first 5 weeks of his NFL career, Jane Daniels ran the ball, I think, 12 or more times. I don't have the stats in front of me correctly, but it was double digit runs. Ever since then, he hasn't run the ball more than 8 times, and that includes designed runs. So it just kind of shows you that as Jayden has gotten more comfortable in the National Football League with the speed of the game, he's relied on himself as a pocket passer, as a
Right.
strong arm quarterback more, but they still allow him to utilize his legs. And I think having that freedom, and not just the freedom, but the acceptance of, hey, Jane, just go do what you need to do, man, to be successful, feel comfortable out there, and we'll fine tune it. Every coach says, I want my guys playing fast. Well, if you want Jane Daniels playing fast in week one, it's going to look like 16 wins.
There
Okay,
you
you
go.
played fast. Now let's figure out how to zero you into the target we want you in while you continue to play fast. And that's why you have a guy he's won what, 7 out of 9 Rookie of the Week awards, and one of the ones that he didn't week is when he got injured in the first drive of the game, which he led them down the field into the red zone before he got hurt, and all these things. Like, I mean, this is a kid who's been able to do that. I think Cliff Kingsbury, for everything that he's done, that's the biggest thing he deserves credit for, is allowing Jaden Daniels to be Jaden Daniels.
And a lot of people, they want to fit, a square peg into a round hole and make them fit into this and don't want them to do that. And I
Yep.
always think, man, just let people play and figure it out. You can hone them in as long as they're doing things just like you said, and progressing and getting better week by week. You can't stop them and have them play slow and thinking too much.
Yep.
Again, we can have a different conversation about Caleb Williams on a different day, but you see a lot of that going on there. So,
Yeah.
speaking of things that have turned around, the offensive line for the Washington Commanders
Mhm.
is playing. I don't want to just say incredible, but compared to what it was previous seasons, let's just say that it has been a
Yeah.
complete turnaround. Number one, how is that happening, and what are they doing differently?
Yeah, I mean, there's 3 layers to that. One, the offensive line itself has been better than a lot of people expected, and for me personally, coming into the season, certainly had my apprehension about the offensive line. Certainly had my concerns, even if you want to call it that. 3 out of the 5 members of this line were new. Um, one of them was a rookie. Brandon Coleman is a rookie, and he's a left tackle playing arguably the most important spot. Tyler Biotis coming in as a center is being relied on to call all the checks. Whereas in Dallas, the understanding is that some of it was him, some of it was Dak. I don't know what the split is exactly, or why and all that stuff. But it's okay. Now it's all on Tyler Biotis. Like his football IQ is really going to get tested here. And fortunately, he's stood up to the challenge, and the O line has gotten better. Another thing that has helped that, and this is where you have to give a hat tip to Cliff Kingsbury again, is this team might be the chippiest team I've ever seen. I'm talking chip blocks on the left, on the right, tight ends, running backs, wide receivers. Like, if you go back to the 18-yard pass that Jane Daniels threw to Terry McLaurin last week, you're in the red zone, obviously 18-yard pass, right? You're in the red zone. This is one of the best red zone defenses in the NFL. And Jane Daniels just standing there tall, proud, and comfortable,
Right.
delivering a dime to Terry McLaurin. You go, how does that happen against, I think they're the number 3 red zone defense at the time coming into that week? Well, if you go back to the play, you got Luke McCaffrey helping out the rookie Brandon Coleman with the chip block against Brian Burns. And on the other side, you got Zach Ertz helping out the right tackle, Super Bowl champion Andrew Wiley with the chip block and Aziz Ojolari. That's how that happens, because that chip block alone creates the time that Jayden needs to get to the top of his drop, make the read that he needs to comfortably, and just smoothly deliver a ball. And this team is just they're chip blocking against everybody. It doesn't matter how great or how bad your rusher is. They understand that it only is going to benefit the team. And then the guys are really good at putting an elbow, putting a shoulder in that pass rusher's ribs, and getting out into the flat or getting out into the
Right.
route where they need to go. So it's working really well, and they're really proud of it. I've got a lot of Commanders fans who are a little frustrated. They want to see Luke McCaffrey getting more targets. And people go, Luke McCaffrey's pass route win rate is super high. Why isn't he getting the ball more? Well, he's like the third or fourth dude in the progression. Jane Daniels isn't getting to the third or fourth progression, but Luke McCaffrey, you talk to him, and you talk to him about his chip blocking, you talking about his downfield blocking. That dude is super proud about what he's accomplishing for this team. So while the fans want more for him, I promise you, he is fully satisfied with his role on this team right now, and that is another reason that all of this happened. And again, going back to Jayden being Jayden, the dude makes quick decisions. He
Right.
does not sit on a read very long. And when he does, it turns out to be the right read. I'll go back to another throw. It was a 31-yard gain to Noah Brown. And in the moment, I saw Zach Ertz coming open about 8 yards downfield, and I'm like, Jayden, take like you're looking right at it, bro. Take the 8 yards. And he holds it. I'm like, bro, take the 8 yards, man. It's right there. He holds it, and then he delivers the ball. And I look up, I'm like, there's it's not double coverage, but there's two giants in the area. And so I just kind of wince. I'm like, and the ball goes right over the Giants defenders into the hands of Noah Brown for a 31-yard gain. That is what Jayden Daniels is doing. He's confident in what he's seeing. He's accurate in what he's seeing, and he's delivering the ball where it needs to go. And he understands how much time he does have or doesn't have, and he's making sure that he either gets out of the pocket or the ball gets out of the pocket. One of the two things is happening. All of it combined makes this offensive line look a lot better than it was supposed to.
Gotcha. One of the things that you mentioned, talking about fans wanting to see McCaffrey get more looks, it's like the fan is short for fanatic, and I'm a
Yeah,
fan. We're all fans.
yeah,
You would think that would be they would be happy, but here they are saying, "Hey, I know you're making quick decisions and you're making the right reads, but maybe don't make quite as quick a decisions and throw it to another guy." It's wild
yeah.
what goes on sometimes, but you know what? Winning football, it is what it is. I like that. Talk to me about Bobby Wagner. I don't.
Mm.
Is this that guy? Is he ever going to get old, David? I mean, like
I
seriously,
don't
is
know.
he ever going to get old? This guy continues to show up week after week. But look, I'll let you tell it. I know what I see, but I will let you tell what he's meant to this defense.
I'll tell you what, man. Bobby Wagner. It might be the fact that he's just re-enrolled in college. So he's starting this year. He's a new student at Howard University.
Okay,
Maybe that's a reason. He's getting that young blood back in him and reliving those college days. I don't know, but Bobby Wagner, man, from the moment he showed up, the leadership was evident. Right, the future Hall of Fame swagger and confidence, and everybody wants to talk to him. I mean, you got veterans in the locker room talking to Bobby Wagner. You got rookies. I mean, Jayden Daniels and Bobby. I don't think there's a day that goes by you go in that locker room you don't see Jayden and Bobby engaged in some sort of conversation. And some of it's fun, right? Trash talking about basketball and all that, but some of it is business, and all of it leads to success on the field because everybody's kind of on the same page. Honestly, early in the season, like 2-3 weeks into the season, you kind of saw Bobby's age a little bit. You're kind of like, okay, Bobby Wagner slowed down a little bit. But I'll tell you what, man, since week 4 on, Bobby Wagner has been on a tear. He's leading this team in tackles. He's making checks. There was a game. I can't remember. It wasn't the Giants. It might have been the Panthers game where they tried to get some tempo going. And Joey Jr. basically was like, well, I didn't have enough time to get the call in because of the way the tempo was going. So Bobby's down there calling plays on his own. You know what I mean? There was 4 plays specifically that Joey Jr. pointed to and said, yeah, Bobby made those calls, and they were great calls. They worked really well, and I think one of them was an intercept, ended up producing an interception. And that just shows you the impact that Bobby Wagner has, not just his physical ability, which has been better than I think a lot of people expected it to be, but it's
right.
also that mental ability and how he sets up his teammates to be successful. And it's been great to see. And it's just been great to also get to know him, man. Cause sometimes you get these like super famous Hall of Fame caliber people and you meet them and you're like, maybe I shouldn't have met you. But Bobby's one of
Right.
those guys that you get to meet him and you're like, okay, man, I'm like when you get up there to get your to get your gold jacket, I'm going to be happy for you being up there getting your gold jacket.
Gotcha. That's really cool. Speaking of defense, we'll just stick there with the Commanders, digging into this game a little bit. The Steelers' offense looks different
Mm,
than what it did earlier in the season through the first 6 games. Russell Wilson has come in. I'm not saying he set the world on fire because that's not the truth, but he's played better quarterbacking than Justin Fields. And Fields wasn't playing bad, but it's just
no.
been better quarterbacking. They look different. Talk to me a little bit about what the Commanders are going to have to do or going to try to do to try to slow down because the Steelers kind of been on a roll offensively the last few games. How they're going to try to slow them down a little bit.
Yeah, there's 3 layers to this thing, I think. The first layer is containing Russell Wilson in the pocket and collapsing down on him. That's something that this defense has been able to do pretty well. They had some success against Lamar Jackson. That's a totally different animal. You guys, Steelers fans and the Steelers are very well aware of how different that is. Um, Kyler Murray, they did a good job of that against, and that I think is part of the key to Russell Wilson because Russell Wilson, man, getting on the edge. I mean, that dude is so dangerous. That deep ball is still one of the best, if not the best, deep ball in the National Football League. Which is why I mean, Joey Jr. on Thursday straight up, and I was actually a little bit surprised to hear this come from a coach. Straight up admitted that Mike Williams joining that offense with that quarterback is scary. Like he flat out said, it's scary, and he didn't
Right.
go, it's scary. But we're going to figure it out. We're going to stop it. No, he just said it's scary, and that was the end of his answer. So acknowledging the strength of your opponent at least. So that's number one, right?
Mhm.
Contain him, right? Wrap that pocket around him. Don't let him get out of it, and then squeeze in on top of him as you do that. That's number one. Number two is tackle. I'm watching Steelers tape and I'm watching some of these explosive plays. And you don't ever want to take anything away from talented players. Like Pickens is really talented, Najee Harris is really talented, but there are also some really bad tackling forms from defenses trying to take these guys down as well. And when you have talented players that can make their own space and make guys miss on their own as it is, don't come through them with bad form and bad tackling attempts in the and add to that potential ability. That's how you just shoot yourself in the foot. So that's number two. Number three is don't get lost by the sleight of hand. I was talking to Chris Carter, Locked On Steelers, during our crossover episode, and it reminds me of the movie Now You See Me, about the magicians who go through and they rob banks and do all this stuff with all their magic tricks and everything else. I watched the Steelers offense, man. Honestly, a lot of it reminds me of Cliff Kingsbury's offense, where before the snap sometimes, at the snap sometimes, after the snap a lot of times, there's just so much movement. There's a guy going this way, there's a guy going that way. And I can't tell you how many times I've counted a defense being in cover three, and next thing you know, that one of those side corners that's got that outside third is in the middle of the field chasing somebody. And it's just like, why are you in the middle of the field in cover three? And when he's doing that, there's somebody leaking out into that quarter of the field, or that third of the field where that guy's supposed to be. And now he's
Right.
wide open for a big gain. Don't get caught up in the tricks underneath. Don't get caught up in all of the trash that's going on under there, because it's designed by Arthur Smith to get you out of position. Maintain your assignment, maintain your position. But the other part of it is those are also all man beaters. And there's a lot of touchdowns the Steelers have scored this year that are on man beaters. And this is a very aggressive defense. They want to play a lot of man coverage. So it we'll see, because they definitely shifted towards more zone. So again, that discipline in zone, and then in man, just understanding your shades, understanding where your help is, and reacting accordingly. Those are going to be incredibly important, man. It's a very fun offense to study. I see a lot of commanders similarities between the Commanders and Steelers, which is really cool, and I
Right.
think it's going to make for a really fun game on Sunday. But yeah, man, it's going to test the discipline, the eye discipline of both sides of this contest.
Absolutely. I did the same thing, just doing the study and digging into this. I mean, it's a very, very close matchup. I don't think either
Right.
side has, you sometimes you can say a team has this number of advantages and matchup problem. I don't think you can do that in this game. I think it's pretty
Mhm.
evenly matched.
Yep.
Flipping to the other side of the ball, we talked about the Commanders' offensive line playing well. The Steelers, their D line and just front seven is a little different than a
Hmm.
lot of teams, and they get an infusion back. I've talked about that on a couple podcasts. It's like you usually don't get this kind of infusion to a 6-2 team middle of the year. When you get this kind of infusion of guys that have been hurt, it's usually your team is like 2-6, three
Yeah.
and five, something of that nature. Where the Steelers are 6-2, and now they're getting this back. How do they try to slow down? Because it's TJ Watt. Look, in my opinion, I
Hmm.
think he's the best defensive player in the world.
I
But it's
agree.
not just him. There's more guys that you have to account for, and if you don't, the Steelers will wreck your play.
Yeah.
What's kind of the plan there to try to slow down? And I call it the D line because outside linebackers, Steelers are playing 55% of their snaps in nickel, so those
Mhm.
guys are rush ins. What's their plan to slow down this defensive line?
Yeah, I think it's indicative of what the Pittsburgh Steelers defense is doing. When if you're a casual Commanders fan, you're not hearing the name Cam Hayward a lot this week, and like there's going to be some fans who are really surprised about nobody
Yes.
was talking
Yep.
about this guy, because
Yeah.
there's so many other things to talk about that he almost gets lost in the
Correct.
wash, and that's a damn shame. Um, it's the chips, right? The chips are obviously a big part of this, and TJ Watt is no stranger to that. There's been, that's the strategy to try to stop him. And I understand that the Steelers have been moving him around a little bit to try to counter some of those looks and all that stuff. So again, that's where you lean back to Tyler Biotish. Like Tyler Biotish is going to be massive in this, because he's got to make those calls. I talked to him about these chip blocks and like how many of them are just designed by play. How many of them are you checking into and calling and saying, hey, Luke McCaffrey down there, you're going to stay in and chip this guy. And he's like, it's a combination. It just kind of depends on the context, the situation, and the play. So you can't tell me like one for one what it looks like. But that's where Tyler Biadasz and his football IQ is really going to show in this game. And then, hate to give anybody an advantage, but if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers, you're not looking to get TJ Watt. If you line him up a little bit more inside, you're not looking to get him on Sam Cosme. You're looking to get him on Nick Allegretti. I love Nick Allegretti. And I'll tell you this, even if they line him up and get him matched up on Nick Allegretti, try to bring somebody outside to occupy that tackle, you're going to get the fight of your life from Nick Allegretti. But he is a little bit smaller, and he's definitely there more for his athleticism and his energy than he is his ability to just kind of stand up and anchor down on the line of scrimmage. So to me, that's kind of where your weakness is. Now at the same time, again, Tyler Biotis, right? He's going to be the guy who's trying to help double team those guys or try to use that tackle, and that's really what it's all about: asset management, recognizing what you think they're going to bring, assigning the right amount of people to the right amount of spots, and getting these things blocked up. And then on Jayden to understand that, look, we're gonna be wrong sometimes. So you have to come into that snap, and that's something he's been really good at so far, is making his pre-snap read, understanding, all right, this is where I want to go for my first look, but being very quick to understand what I wanted for my first look is not happening. What does that mean in relationship to my second look? And if it's not the good thing for your second look, that's usually when he's getting out and either extending that player heading downfield. So those kinds of things, and then trying to establish that run game, man. Brian Robinson Jr., when he's active, this Washington Bears defense or offense can take a whole different shape. When he's inactive, it can get a little bit dicey. Austin Eckler's still good, but he's not Brian Robinson Jr. right now. So B Rob being active, if he's active, he's still working through a hamstring issue that caused him to miss the Giants game. So we'll see. But I know they're doing everything they can to get him out there. He's going to be huge because again, TJ Watt can't sack the quarterback if the running back's out the ball. So
That's right. Totally agree. One thing about it is the Steelers defense has been pretty vanilla this year. That's one thing that Steeler fans have been a little bit upset. You're not seeing exotic blitzes, zone blitzes. You're not seeing linebackers. You're not seeing a lot of that. Maybe on rundowns they might bring Deshaun Elliott. So I feel like maybe they were saving this for the second half of the season because they understand how difficult it's going to be starting with this game.
yeah,
But it's weird because I don't think people at the beginning of the year, including myself, thought that this was going to be the game that the Steelers were going to start the difficult part of their schedule. But it is.
right.
So I like it. I got to put you on the spot, David. Here we are. And I'll get you out of here with this, man. Who wins this game on Sunday?
This is a tough one. I don't actually have like a score prediction finalized yet. I've actually got a writer at Commander Game Day hounding me for my score prediction. I just don't have one for him yet. I gotta wait. I definitely gotta wait to see if Brian Robinson is
Yeah.
active. I'll put it this way: I think if Brian Robinson is active, I've always kind of said it this way. If I'm on the fence, I'm going to lean Commanders because I know the Commanders. I know what they're capable of. So I'm just, obviously everybody wants you to pick a side. So if I'm on the fence, I'm always going to just say I'm going to go Commanders. Kind of like the books, right? If it's 3 point favorite at home, it's basically a push. So that's kind of how I'm sitting on this. If Brian Robinson doesn't play, I kind of lean Steelers. I kind of think that the game flow is probably going to go the Steelers' way. This is a game that's got overtime written all over it. It's actually a game, like if there was a game on the schedule I could look at and say that's where the Commanders end up with a tie, which I know is gross. This is
Ugh.
probably that game where I'm like, this could end up in a tie. Either way, I think it's gonna be a really great game. Um, Honestly, man, I'm like, can we make this a Super Bowl game? Like, can this be you know what I mean? Like, can we see each other again in February? That'd be a lot of
Yeah,
fun.
man.
I haven't been excited for a game. I mean, excited for every game, right? But I'm like my level of excitement as we get closer to Sunday is building to the point of where it was for the Ravens game. And that just kind of shows, I think, where the Steelers are. They don't get the headlines as much as the Ravens do,
Right.
and obviously all that stuff. But I think this is gonna be a really good one, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's going to be a real good game. Like I mentioned, the matchups are pretty dead even, man. So I'm excited. David, man, thank you again for giving us your time. I know you don't have to do that, so we really do appreciate. We're like I said, we're a growing channel, just starting out. We're trying to get our bearings about us. Let us know, or let everybody know where they can find you at wherever you're doing your stuff at.
Yeah, no, it was great. I appreciate the invite. You're doing a great job. You do a great job of hosting this show. So I appreciate your hospitality and yeah. So writing commandergameday.com, part of Sports Illustrated's group of sites, and then Locked On Commanders 5 days a week. That's my main outlet. So you can find me there. I'm always telling people I'm a general football fan. I actually didn't grow up a team of any one or a fan of any one team. So I'm just a football dude. I just love football. So happy to chop it up with you and look forward to it again.
All right, I appreciate it again, everybody. Wherever you find David, look, Commanders fans, if you just tricked on or slipped and got in here on the algorithm, make sure you go follow him on all of his platforms, man. Thank you again, David, for your time, and we will be right back. All right, everybody. That was David Harrison from Locked On Commanders. Look, the guy knows football, man. He knows about the Commanders. We could sit and chop up football all day long if we needed to. That's why I like bringing those type of people on that know what they're talking about. And again, we've done that every week. Trying to get people that are super knowledgeable about football and about their team. David seems to have the pulse of what's going on with the Commanders. So I was glad he accepted the invitation to join us on Steelers Almighty and kind of give you guys the what's what. So I appreciate that, man. But look, this is going to be a really good football game. I'm looking forward to it. David mentioned it that he was excited about this football game as much as he was about the Ravens. Well, the Steelers look like they're about as good as the Ravens, don't they? Especially with the way that this offense is working right now. So I like the matchup. I'm favorable for this matchup. I think that it's going to be even, but I just like the Steelers being able to come out on top in this game. Like I mentioned, Boz late. He's best field goal kicker in the league, in my opinion. And I like what we can do in this game. I think our offense is going to have to score some points, move up and down the field, but I think we're capable. I think Mike Williams is going to have a more of a role than what people are thinking early. I think he's going to have more of a role because I think he understands. They'll put in a package of stuff that he can just learn until he gets up to speed. But I think he's going to have more of a role. Again, guys, don't get discouraged and think that we're saying that the other guys, Corey or Calvin Austin and Van Jefferson, aren't any good. Nobody's saying that. It just means that Mike Williams is better. For instance, take Mike Williams out of the equation. Is George Pickens better than those guys? Yes. And nobody's saying that they're bad because George Pickens is better. Nobody's saying that they're bad because Mike Williams is better. It just means the Steelers updated the room, which is good. They updated, upgraded, whatever you want to call it. I love it. I love it because how many years in the past have the Steelers just not done that? And you're thinking, man, we could have used a guy here, used a guy there. Steelers are going for it. Other teams, as we have mentioned, the Ravens, they made trades to get better. The Chiefs, the two-time defending champs, they made trades to get better. The Bills, they made trades to get better. So the Steelers got to do the same thing. And maybe it wasn't who you absolutely wanted. I agree. It may not have been who we wanted, but it doesn't mean we didn't upgrade. Doesn't mean that at all. I like what we did. I like where we're at. I'm looking forward to this football game. It's going to be in a crazy environment because, like I said, they got a lot of passionate fans in Washington. It's a hostile environment, but there's nothing wrong with hostile. I love hostile. And the Steelers going in there, going and getting a big win because this will be a big win. Make no mistake. It's not like going and beating the Raiders, going and beating the Commanders. Commanders are a good football team. Steelers can get this. This sets in motion the second half of the season because here's what I would say before I close it out is nobody, when we first looked at this schedule, thought that the Commanders game was going to be this difficult. There was nobody out there that said that included this in the tough part of the Steelers' second half of the season when the schedule first came out, or even to begin the season. Nobody thought that. Well, it's here. There's a couple other teams from up the road. Let's call them the Cleveland Browns. Those games we thought were going to be tougher. Yeah, they're not going to be so tough. Or it doesn't appear to be. We know Cleveland always puts together something for us, but we'll see. But I'm looking forward to this game. I'm excited. I think the Steelers win it. But let's be rowdy. Remember, guys, we're going to be live an hour before the game. Make sure you show up an hour before. We're going to do our live. Everything that we're going to do, kick it off to get ready for that football game. It's an early kick. Finally, we get another early kick. I like those better, in my opinion. And then 15 minutes after the game, we will be live for your rant, for your comments, all of that stuff. Make sure you show up, the Steelers Almighty people. And one last thing, call in. Leave your rant, leave your question, and we will play it on the Wednesday podcast. That number again is 412 444 8390. 412 444 8390. We appreciate you guys. Love you guys. Thank you guys for showing up. I'm looking forward to this football game, and hopefully it's a Steelers victory. Until then, aloha.